In this video we're going to cover some of the more traditional hand animation techniques available to us in Character Studio 4. To do this we're going to use this example, which is the character Tristan from a fully animated feature film done by Aniria Pictures. Probably one of my favorite features about Character Studio is the simplicity of actually moving the character around. In order to deal with this, what we did was built into Character Studio the ability to work in both forward kinematic and inverse kinematic at the same time. So to give you an idea of what I mean by this, right now I've got the hand selected and I can grab the hand and move it around, and you can see just like a normal IK system it's solving for the rest of the arm. Now typically in any other animation system this would be what you would do to position it. You would get this, then you would change a vector to actually adjust the elbow positioning, and you would get your character positioned. In our system, however, you can actually go through and just as easily rotate any joint on the object through an FK system. The beauty of this, of course, means that you have more options and more possibilities for how you pose the character. It gives a much easier methodology for an animator to follow. They understand it a lot better because sometimes just rotating the shoulders is all you really wanted to do, and having to grab the hand to do it seems a little counterintuitive. Now, of course, posing the character is only half the battle. The other half is actually keying the character. So to make this a little easier to see, I'm just going to hide the skin of the character. Just pick it like so, and go in and just say hide the selection. So there we go. Now what we're seeing is just the biped that makes up this character. And if we actually go in here and look, and I'll just pick on this foot, you can see we've got a number of keyframes on it that actually represent the motion of the foot. Now what I want you to notice, if I go to a wireframe mode and just zoom in on this, is you can actually see little red dots moving around. This actually represents the pivot points that are being used on that particular frame to animate the foot. Now this is something that we did to actually make life a lot easier for animators. Typical problem in animation is that a foot has a number of different pivot points that can be used, so you have to build a very complex rig in order to animate the foot. In our system, all we have to do is simply tell it where it needs to pivot. So if I work with this foot that you see here, let's go along to a point where it's probably going to start to lift, right about there, and I'm going to set what's called a planted key. What this does is it tells the foot that it's currently sitting on the ground in a planted pose. From here what I want to do is select the pivot that I want it to pivot on next time round. So I'm just going to go in here and you can actually see all the different choices for pivots. It'll create a pivot for 3 positions on the heel, 3 positions on the ball of the foot, and then a position for every joint of a toe. Since I've only built in one big toe for this character, I only have to deal with one point. In this case I'm going to say I want to pivot around the ball, and then I can just turn that off. Now if I just roll forward a couple frames, I can now again set another planted key, hit rotate, and you can see how it now lifts on that ball of the foot. So I just lift it a little ways. I again hit select pivot, pick the toe as the next point I want to rotate, shuttle forward a few frames again, simply rotate it, and now you can see it actually lifts off the toe. Again, set a planted key so the whole thing rolls together, and now I can go just a couple frames further, set a free key, it now unlocks it, and now you'll actually notice the rotation happens around the ankle as you would expect with a foot that's now floating in the air. So it's this type of functionality that makes it very easy to actually animate this character. The beauty is as well is because we've done it based on these animatable pivot points, all this motion can then be transferred to another character seamlessly, even if the foot has different lengths. So for instance, large floppy clown feet. I'd also like to note that this same system of animatable pivot points is available on the hands as well. So if I actually go up here and look at one of my hands, so you can see there's the hand there, and I go in and set a key and then look for pivots, you can actually see all the different pivot points that I have available to me on the hand. So doing an animated hand where the fingers actually walk across the surface, for instance, becomes incredibly easy because I can set which part of the finger it'll actually pivot off of and then animatably shift to a different pivot point as I go through the animation. If I actually had to do that without this functionality, it would be almost impossible to actually keep track of and keep the hand from looking like it's sliding across the surface. Another feature that was added to Character Studio and then improved for Character Studio 4 was the ability to copy and paste postures, poses, and tracks from one limb to another on a character biped or to other bipeds. So an example, of course, is one of the big complaints of animators everywhere, which is the tediousness of actually posing the hand over and over again throughout an animation, when many times the poses are very similar and you just want to make a little tweak off of an existing pose. So to deal with that, for instance, we can take this hand here, which is in more of a relaxed pose, and maybe I want to put it over on the other hand. Well, I can go in, and I'm currently set to posture. Just simply copy the posture of the hand as it sits, and it doesn't have to be on a keyframe to do this. I can do this in mid-pose as it's going from one key to another. And you'll notice I can then name this pose, simply track along to another frame or any other frame where I want to move it to the other hand. I can go over here and say I want to paste this to the opposite side. I can also paste it onto the same hand, of course, but I'm going to paste it to the opposite side, and you can see that that hand then moves into that new pose. I can, of course, take multiple postures off of this, so if I wanted to, I could just kind of rotate this into a slightly different pose. Let's say something like that. Again, pick the entire hand and simply do another one, and you now see that I have two choices in here for my postures, and the hand over here can then have either one of them applied. So I can go through and pick either one and drop them on. This not just works between the limbs of a single biped, but I can also copy these postures from this biped onto another one. We also have the ability to copy entire poses of a character, and in fact copy an entire track of motion. So if you have a track of animation that you're using on the arm, you can copy that and paste it onto the arm of a whole other biped. The last feature that I want to show you in this video is a new feature to Character Studio 4. It's the ability to actually add list controllers onto any object in the biped. So for instance, let's just zoom in on the hand here. Let's say I want to give the hand a bit of a tremor, but I obviously don't want to animate all the keyframes to actually cause that tremor. I can go in and go to my different list controllers for the hand. I have one for scale, rotation, and position. Go into the position controller, and in the available slot, simply apply a noise. Once the noise is on there, you can already see the jittering that happens on the hand. Well, I can then go in and, of course, adjust the noise itself, what type of frequency it's going to use, the strength, all these different things can be controlled. Not only that, however, is I can actually control, in the list properties themselves, the weighting of that controller. So if I decided that I don't want noise to have 100% weighting, I can bring that down, and it'll now have much less weighting in relation to, for instance, the underlying animation of the biped, or any other controllers they may want to put on here, like an extra Euler XYZ controller. This gives me a lot of added flexibility when actually animating this character, especially when you want animation to be more automatic or to be procedural. As you can see, there are a number of features inside of Character Studio which make hand animation very easy. The ability to pose with IK and FK, animatable pivot points in the feet and hands, and the ability to copy and paste poses and postures around the biped all make the world of animation much easier and much more intuitive. Also, the ability to layer controllers onto the different objects in the biped adds substantial power and flexibility to the job of a technical director.